very happy to say Pat Nevin is with us. Good evening.
Good evening, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Believe it or not, I was intending to talk to you about the football from the weekend because we just had Simon Cooper on, who's written a great book, by the way, Chums, about how a cast of Oxford students have taken over British politics and UK power, and we're talking about Tories and BBC and the whole situation. And I thought, well, that's enough of that. Irish people, can't be expected to listen to it all night. And then I see Pat Nevin defends decision, the big headline, Pat Nevin defends decision to go on BBC on Sunday. Now, I thought this was interesting. I wouldn't think Pat Nevin is a fan of, let's build a wave machine and send those dinghies back across the channel. That wouldn't be up your political street, I would have thought. So talk to us. The decision to go on, was it 5 Live, Pat, on Sunday?
I've not read that headline. Where was that headline?
It was in the Mail. Nevin defends decision.
Yeah. By the way, the Mail will be listening to this because they quite often take stuff from this and use it. It got me into trouble a few times.
Okay. Well, I don't know if it worries you or not, but the Mail comment section types fully supported of you to stick it to those liberal wokey types. So you had the support of the Mail comment section.
They clearly didn't hear what I said then.
Yeah. So talk to us.
Strike.
Sorry, you froze at the perfect. You froze at it was like a conspiracy. You froze at the perfect moment there. I'll say again. Talk to us.
Well, strangely, everyone knows what the story was. Gary Lineker was told to stand back, I believe. Then from no one talked to anyone. Just people stopped saying they were going on. At this point in time, I don't do Twitter or anything like that. I've only got very few outlets to talk to people. And my only outlets are, on radio and particularly on 5 Live, who I work for, and yourselves as well. And I thought it was very important to make a number of points. So the only option I've got is to go on and talk. Now, and this is about free speech, this discussion. I think the idea of speaking is a good idea. So the next time I was supposed to be on was for this game for Newcastle against Wales. So I said to the BBC, yeah, I'll go on if you want. But I get to say what I want to say at the start of the show, particularly about the Gary Lineker situation, where we are just now, and what some of the dangers are. And give them a due. They went, yeah, all right. So I thought we should be pretty good, seeing as they're very worried about the politics that are going on just now. And I said a number of things that I wanted to say, and I've continued to say them, and various other things, because I think it is important to speak. The most important thing was they needed to talk because it was very, very close to spiralling out of control. And if it spiraled out of control, there was a danger for the BBC. And I think there was an existential danger for the BBC because when you have an argument, and in the end, I know the channel I'm on just now, but talk to me about RTE. Is it state-sponsored? Yes?
Yeah.
Are they allowed to be impartial? Do they have to be impartial?
They do. It'd be very similar lines, yeah.
Exactly, very similar lines. So people in Ireland understand that's the BBC line. If you then say and have an argument, be it you or Gary Lineker saying things that are supposedly beyond impartiality, wherever it's said, or you're somebody else who comes and says something on the other side, such as, bomb those boats. Well, either side you're on, you're not being impartial, you're having your point of view. That was what people would say. So the argument then is, do we have to be completely impartial all times, on and off? So I wanted to make sure that people knew that we don't know where we stand. We are in an impossible situation. The rules that govern the BBC are vague and they must be clarified. So I made a pained plea, trying not to sound angry about it, that this has to be sorted out. And why put, okay, Gary's getting through it. Yeah, but every single reporter that I met, every single local guys that are on 15 grand a year, for their job, and maybe less because they're part-time, they're the ones that are breaching their contracts. Now, I'm a union man. I know the danger of that. And I know that right now, there are massive cuts in local radios, etc. over there. I stand by the little guys that are in trouble. And they were frightened to death. And it was imperative that when we have these actions, and it would be better if we had a discussion first, but when we have these actions, that we make sure we do them collectively and talk about it first. So it was important to do that, and it was important to make the comment. I wanted to make it very, very clear I thought there was one particular danger above all. And the danger above all is the fact that there are people, and I need to watch myself because it'll be used, because I'm not supposed to talk politically, as you probably know. There are people who want rid of the licence fee in Britain, right? They generally come from one side of the divide, one party. And I absolutely and utterly was convinced, and hinted at it, more than hinted at it, in my little monologue, that this is existential for the BBC. If this fight escalates and people demand to be able to say all they want, and that's fine, you get to have freedom of speech, and that's great, yee-haw, hurrah, we win. There's no BBC, because that's why you're there, because you're impartial. So it became existential. So that sounded to, as usual, you know me, I'm thinking 4 steps ahead, right? I'm thinking where this is going. And I'm thinking, I'm scared. Scared's not the right word, I'm angry and worried about that.
Yeah.
Today, on the 6 p.m. news, just over 24 hours after I said that, an MP came on and said, you need to question the licence fee because of lack of impartiality. Less than a day. So exactly what I thought,
yes,
and why I went on to warn about, was done. So that was why I went on, because I felt I really had to make that point.
Yes, interesting. So whatever you think about Lineker's politics, and I suspect you agreed with his sentiment, are you...
Totally.
Are you...
Not the exact wording, shall we say that, right? But yeah, we stand in the same hill together. Yeah.
So are you disappointed with him tweeting? Do you think he was reckless in his use of Twitter?
No, I think he pushes the boundaries. He nudges the boundaries, and if he wants to do that, I don't do Twitter. The phrase is I don't engage in Twitter. I've used it. I don't engage in it. I don't think it's a good. Personally, if you ask me, I don't think it's a good place to have a nuanced discussion, because you don't get depth. You get binary arguments. You get people shouting, vicious things at you. I know, happened to me. It probably happened to me today. I've not looked, but it probably has. Not that I care. I care about the other people that were alongside me, that were working around, and they were very, very hurt with some of the things that they feared and then were said about them. I care about them, and I care about the fact that they were unfairly treated in that situation. But for Gary, if he wants to push the limits and push the boundaries, then that's it. But and this is the big but, we're going to have dialogue now. It's been agreed. Yes, it's been kicked down the road a bit, and we know that's part of what's happened, just to calm things down a bit. But there's going to be, hopefully, dialogue, consultation. There's going to be reports done into it. There's going to be external people, hopefully not governmental, who will come in and look at where the guidelines have to be clarified. At that point in time, very specific, I know I sound like a lawyer here, but at that point in time, we, and that's people like me and Gary Lineker, he probably earns 60 times what I earn, but for the BBC, but we're in a similar position, the fact that we are not staff members. We then have to make a decision. Can we work under those rules? Do we want to work under these rules when we know exactly what the rules are? And that's where I really want us to get to. And it really isn't a personal thing, because it's not really that big a deal for me personally. It doesn't massively affect me personally. You dump me tomorrow, you dump me tomorrow. I mean, I'm not getting I'm not getting millions of pounds out of it. I'll survive. But for others who have actually found difficulty, and some reporters have had to apologise for what seemed like small infractions, but I've had to apologise for it. We need to clarify it, and we need to get into this space.
Well, so there are the rules, first of all, and then, as has been pointed out right across the weekend, there are countless examples which suggest inconsistent enforcement of the rules, and that's a whole other area for the BBC to get on top of very, very quickly.
But the question I was going to ask, I was talking to somebody outside the ground in Newcastle, and they were asking about it, and I said, would you have walked out in principle alongside Gary? And he went, yes. I went, good. If somebody else come along and said, I think President Putin is a brilliant guy, and the Ukrainians are all fascists, would you have walked out there if they'd have told you to stand down? I went, no. Why not? It's freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Is that not Is that not what we're talking about?
Yeah.
And he said, well, no, it's not. It's about what you say. I said, so you decide then. So it's up to you then what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And that is the fear you've got with the BBC. I know where I stand. People who know me know. It's damned obvious where I stand.
Sure.
But I'm also very, very wary. And I'm not trying to stop people being able to talk and people who have opinions. Never do. I mean, I'm very much of a person who is in favour of freedom of speech as long as it doesn't hurt and massively offend people. But if you then take that away from the BBC, there's no point in the BBC after that, if you take that away. So you need to find where the line should be drawn. And RTE or whatever. Because whenever we think of these, we need them, but they're there. And everything else surrounds around it. But if you're Sky or ITV or something over here, and BBC are getting all this money for a licence fee, and then they're doing exactly the same job with you, nothing's different, you're going, excuse me, why are you getting all this money? So, and that's why the BBC has to be different. And that's why this dichotomy of where, freedom of speech versus impartiality, you have to find it. By the way, good luck finding it.
Well, indeed. So it's frustratingly, we have about 8 minutes here to cover the entire weekend's football. So.
Didn't see much. Match day was so short.
That was terrible. I was surprised how hard it was just to stay with it and keep concentrating and digest everything. I mean, near impossible. So headline news: after heart-stopping last-minute winners against Bournemouth, Arsenal have much-needed game over by half-time win against Fulham. Man City go late against Crystal Palace and Haaland scores the penalty. Manchester United slip up, you would have to say, but it's not going to massively endanger their chances of top four. And I guess you could argue beating Betis, draw with Southampton without Casemiro, it means that whatever crisis happened at Anfield last week is not deepening. And then, of course, Liverpool, wouldn't you know it, after last week, they do their thing against Bournemouth. So that's a bit of a synopsis as Graham Potter continues to win. But you talk too much about Chelsea, and I only have 8 minutes.
I'm not going to go into much about Chelsea, apart from the fact that they did incredibly well and their goals were beautiful. And
they went to a back three, as you said.
I mean, obviously that was clearly the thing to do, and he's done it, and it looks much, much better. It's about creativity, about a team. It's not just about that. It's a wee bit of confidence, and with that confidence, people are trying things. I mean, seriously, anyone who saw the goals, right? They were all very good goals. Yeah. But from that angle, does Chilwell usually shoot from there?
No.
Unless he's playing with confidence. Does Enzo does that scoop with all that comfort and confidence when he's not feeling exactly that way? And of course, the goal that Kovacic scored was a beautiful thing to watch. Actually, I really offended my wife during watching the game because the scoop over the top for Havertz, I said, that's so good, it reminds me of me.
I know. No, to be fair, there was a hint of Nevin off it. What caught your eye elsewhere, though, of those bigger other stories I mentioned?
I mean, I'm obviously slightly biased in the fact that I wanted to see Everton get some sort of result, and they got a result. So everything at the bottom is becoming really intense and really interesting. I'm quite surprised that, I mean, this story there is only the story. It's Arsenal. That is this story.
Yeah.
They're not falling. It looks as if they've had their blip, because the blip, they dropped some points, but when they were having the blip, they somehow got those last minute goals. You think of those last minute goals they got in those games, and they could be level with Manchester City just now, but somehow they got it. And then I watched the first half of the game, which is probably the best half to watch since all the goals were scored then, and they were unstoppable. They were brilliant to watch. Again, the confidence was brilliant, but they absolutely know each other. They know that they're a team that's capable of winning, but capable of keeping on winning. And maybe this week, after watching that first half, it wasn't able to see the second half. I had to go and prep for the game, the Newcastle game. But no, I'm beginning to waver. I'm beginning to waver.
and Trossard, new signing, settling 3 assists is no small feat. Because we will, at the end of the season, if Arsenal do this, we will point to the Bournemouth game and certain other games and say they were the moments. I presume you've been there and been involved in title run-ins, I suppose. the importance of having a game done by half time and what it does for your legs and mentally to kind of put your feet up, I presume that is very, very significant.
Unfortunately, the teams that I was close with, and maybe only once, and it was in the division below, when we won the division below, that was just stressful all the way to the end, and it was in goal difference that we actually managed to win the championship. But when the other times we did it, we never got that, and that's why we imploded.
Right.
That's why we never got Chelsea. We were absolutely in the hunt in 2 occasions, and we'd come from nowhere. We'd come from a division below, and then find yourself in March, and we're in the running to win. We win our games in hand. We've had a few injuries and a few games called off. And what we would have done for 90 minutes, where we weren't stressed, we weren't pushing every sinew, we weren't going into tackles where important players got injured, we would have done anything for that. That win and foot off the gas and everything's easy. See, when they watched the Man United versus Liverpool game the other week there, did Liverpool look tired when they walked off? No. He cruised off, and Man United sludged off. They're physically and mentally wrecked, and that's what happens. So if you can get, and that's what made me look at that period that Arsenal had. Were they able to sustain it and keep on going when they needed to push every single? You need to stretch everything. You need to take every single chance at the end of every single game, and they just about did.
Yeah. And
they got through it. And now, I honestly, the game against Fulham shouldn't be a walk in the park. But they'd have walked off after the end of that game, the vast majority of those players, and just thought, yeah, that's cool. That was like a training session. And it is, you can't imagine how much that's worth. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And of course, you look at their bench, and they've got striker ready again, which kind of helps as well. So getting an extra player who you know is a great player, who knows your system and is your main goal scorer, and you're flying it anyway, and he's ready to walk back in. And if he walks back in with the right attitude, which I have a great suspicion he will, it's an absolute joy. They're in an amazing position at the moment. Can't see any problems at the back. Can't see one player where if he gets injured, oh my God, can't see that. There's not enough. They've got enough all the way through the team that if someone gets injured or someone has to get suspended for a game or two, it doesn't matter. They've got plenty of good colour.
Yeah, so interesting. We're out of time. Let's talk in more depth next week if we can.
Pleasure.
Cheers. Pat Nevin with us on Monday evening as usual. Our football show coverage brought to you by Sky. Watch I was about to say Monday Night Football. Our football show coverage is brought to you by Sky. Watch Man City take on Leipzig in the Champions League tomorrow night live on BT Sports. We'll be all over the Champions League tomorrow.
Football on Off the Ball
with Sky. Watch every UEFA Champions League and Europa League match live on BT Sport this season.
This is News Talk.